So, Puppet Master. This was totally the inspiration for Toy Story, right? Hi guys, welcome to Hydra Collectibles, where we let our geek flag fly. My name's Luke and I'm your host, and today we're going to be discussing one of my all-time favourite horror movie franchises. That's right, today we're talking Puppet Master. Puppet Master is very much a film, or indeed franchise, that you either love or hate. In fact, in my experience, if you watch this movie in your childhood, renting it direct to video from your local store, then you are a fan for life. However, if you are actually watching this movie right now, in your adult life, this could be quite a tough time. Now sure, you could just shut your brain off and enjoy this movie at face value, but really it deserves so much more than that. It's so much more complex. The plot of the Puppet Master franchise goes through several decades and consists of spies, Nazis, the occult, and of course, as the name would suggest, killer puppets. This direct-to-video movie release begins in 1939 as puppeteer Andre Toulons has unlocked the secrets of life and death and used a particular formula to animate his puppet creations. Hunted by Nazi spies, he hides his puppets away within the walls of the Bodega Bay Inn before finally committing suicide, locking away his secrets forever, or so he thought. Fast forward to present day and 4 psychics, along with a stuffed dog for some reason, arrive at the Bodega Bay Inn, having received an invitation from a dear friend, Neil Gallagher. Upon their arrival at the inn, they are met by Neil's wife, who informs them that Neil has unfortunately committed suicide. Confused by this news, the 4 psychics pay their respects to Neil, whose body still resides within the Bodega Bay Inn, before finally settling in for the night. One by one, the 4 psychics begin to experience strange dreams and visions sent by Neil, painting the history in a rather shady light. They begin to investigate, which in turn leads them to their grisly deaths at the hands of the killer puppets. As the friends are killed off one by one, as with any slasher flick, we are left finally with one character, Alex. It is at this point that Neil's wife actually stumbles across some old documents. She finds Toulon's journal as well as some notes from her deceased husband, where it is revealed that Neil too has unlocked the secrets of life and death. Heading back downstairs and entering into the dining hall, they find Neil alive and well, surrounded by the corpses of his friends. Here a discussion is had where we learn that Neil indeed killed his wife's parents in order to gain the inheritance and the property of the Bodega Bay Inn, believing the hidden secrets of Andre Toulon to be locked inside. Neil proceeds by shunning the puppets, throwing Pinhead across the room, now wanting to experiment on the corpses of his friends rather than these silly toys that lie about the place. After witnessing this betrayal, after hearing this shocking revelation, the puppets actually turn on their would-be master, killing Neil with fatal blows. Even as a child, this scene opened my eyes. This made me realise that the puppets weren't just evil killer beings, they actually cared about each other, they actually cared about their master, and after their master betrayed them, they would indeed turn on him. The movie ends with the final psychic Alex leaving the Bodega Bay Inn. Neil's wife sees him off, and we see her walking back into the house with what appears to be the stuffed dog from earlier in the movie. However, as she places the dog on the ground, it leaps into life, now fully reanimated, showing us, the audience, that she too now knows the secret of life and death. Now, Puppet Master is definitely a B movie, probably the B movie of all movies, but despite the fact that it is a B movie, it's not a bad movie. In fact, this film spawned an entire franchise. We've got some 14 odd movies, comic books, we have toy lines, we have so much, all stemming from this original film. Is this film the best one? No, it definitely isn't, but it's definitely in the top 3. And so with that, I'm going to explain to you guys what my top 3 favourite movies are within this franchise, as well as what order you should be watching them in. So, out of some 14 odd straight-to-video movies, which 3 are my favourite? Well, it's quite simple really. 1, 2, and 3. However, not necessarily in that order, because I believe you should be watching them in this order. 3, 1, 2. And I'm about to tell you why. So without going too deep into spoiler territory, I'm going to explain the plot of these 3 films and why you should watch them in this order. Now, it is worth noting that this particular franchise suffers massively from continuity errors. So as long as you can ignore that, you'll be just fine. And we will go into that in a little more detail nearer to the end of the video, so stay tuned. So yeah, let's begin with the beginning, Puppet Master 3. And I know it's the third film in the franchise, but chronologically it's actually the first story, if you neglect all the other crappy sequels that come much later on. So for argument's sake, these three films, this is part 1, film number 3. Confusing, right? So Puppet Master 3, also known as Toulons Revenge, is actually a World War II movie. And I absolutely loved this. I loved the history behind it. I loved the fact that we get to see these puppets operating in this earlier time period. And when we actually delve into who these puppets are, you will learn that actually it makes a lot of sense. So the story begins with Nazi soldiers and scientists trying to create a new formula to raise the dead, wanting to bring back a form of super soldier, or at least a form of human shield to protect their troops. However, these experiments don't seem to last any longer than a couple of minutes. We then skip across to Andre Toulon as he entertains young children with his puppet creations. Now, we already know at this point that the puppets are very much alive and not mechanically operated or used via strings. A Nazi soldier actually witnesses one of these shows and despises the propaganda that Andre Toulon is pushing upon his audience. He approaches Andre Toulon after the show and inquires how these puppets are able to move without strings. Andre Toulon simply keeps his secrets hidden, not wanting to reveal his secrets to Nazi soldiers. This doesn't sway the Nazi soldier, however, who proceeds to spy on Andre Toulon even after leaving the building. He learns that the puppets are indeed alive and that Andre Toulon has formulated some sort of serum that he feeds into them. As the film continues, we see that Andre Toulon has given his wife a doll for her birthday. This is not a living doll, this is simply just a nice hand-carving doll of herself that he has made for her for such an occasion. However, as we all know, this is definitely a Chekhov's gun because this is going to be really important in just a short while. The following night, the Nazi soldiers break into Toulon's home, setting it ablaze, kidnapping Andre Toulon and unfortunately killing his wife Elsa. Andre Toulon is absolutely devastated, however, with the help of his puppets, is able to escape these Nazi soldiers. We later see Andre Toulon break into the local mortuary where he finds his wife's dead body, taking snippets of her brain in order to create a new formula which he feeds into the doll that he had created for her birthday. This doll then morphs and changes into the ghastly form of Miss Leech. That's right, this is Miss Leech from that original movie. It's Andre Toulon's wife. It is later revealed through Andre Toulon as he talks to a young boy that all of these puppets are indeed victims of the Nazi uprising. These are all friends, colleagues, family members who were gunned down or killed by Nazi soldiers who in turn wanted some revenge. They wanted Andre Toulon to bring them back. It is revealed that no one can be brought back unless they choose to be, and there's no greater motivator than revenge. The film does indeed end with Andre Toulon getting his revenge, killing the man in charge that ordered the strike on both himself, his wife, and burning down his home. The film ends with Andre Toulon and this young boy eventually boarding a train along with the puppets in order to escape the Nazi Germany and move on to a new home. So after watching Puppet Master 3, I recommend Puppet Master 1, which we have already spoke about. We know that the film begins in the Bodega Bay Inn where Andre Toulon is still being hunted by Nazi spies. We know that Andre Toulon kills himself and hides the puppets away. Not necessarily in that order, but yeah, you get what I mean. Next up, the final part of this trilogy that I want to talk about is Puppet Master 2, and in my opinion, this is where things get really creepy. So Puppet Master 2 begins with a graveyard scene, and we see the puppets digging up the body of Andre Toulon. We see them opening up the casket and pouring in the formula that brings them back to life. It's quite eerie and quite spooky. We see the hands coming up out of the grave. So this movie takes place a couple of years after the first movie, and we have a new team of paranormal scientists entering into the Bodega Bay Inn in order to discover what happened. Now, a lot of these characters aren't really all that memorable, however there is one who is a key player of importance. And the reason for that is quite simple. Andre Toulon, in his deceased, decaying, rotting form, believes that this is the reincarnation form of his dead wife Elsa. But Luke, how can it be the reincarnation of his dead wife Elsa if Elsa is indeed Leechwoman? Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't really have an answer for that. However, the film does sort of clear the way for that, because we actually see Leechwoman being thrown into a fire and burnt alive, therefore excluding her completely from the rest of the film, and thus giving Andre Toulon this weird, I don't know, sense of it being her. Maybe he's just an old man gone crazy. I mean, death will do that to you. So again, without going too deep into spoilers, because I genuinely think you guys should check out these movies, Andre Toulon basically wants a new body. So he creates this life-size mannequin-esque puppet for himself to be the inhabitant of. However, he doesn't want to be alone, and believing this poor young girl to be his dead wife Elsa reincarnated, he too wants to kill her and put her into a similar body. Obviously, things don't go quite as planned, and once again the puppets turn on their master, killing Andre Toulon and setting things right again. The movie ends with the puppets using the formula on one of the other dead characters, bringing her to life within this mannequin form as they make their way to a children's home. It is incredibly creepy and I love it. So that's pretty much it for the films. They're the three that I would highly recommend. However, the others are still enjoyable, just not so much so. It all depends on your level of B-movie tolerance. But one thing that I do want to just tick off with this video is talking about that shoddy continuity, because it is really bad. So with that, let's get the whiteboard. Okay, so here we have the whiteboard of timelines, and yeah, the continuity is just so bad in these movies. I don't expect that you guys can see all of this, so I will read it out to you. But here we have the first timeline, where, as we know from the first movie via the timestamp, Andre Toulon blew out his brains in 1939. We're going to go on the assumption that present day within these films is the time of the movie's release, which in this case would have been 1989. The second movie's timeline is already where things just go way off track. We see the gravestone of Andre Toulon, which dictates that Andre Toulon died in 1941. This directly contradicts what we saw in the first movie via the timestamp, seeing Andre Toulon blow his brains out in 1939. Once again, we do have to go on the assumption that present day is when the movie was released, this time in 1991. Now, the one thing that I want to explain in this second movie timeline is that we actually see the death of Leech Woman, and yet there is no lost love there. Andre Toulon just kind of shudders it off. And of course, that is because they hadn't yet created Puppet Master 3, where we indeed learned that Leech Woman was his wife. So, yeah, they kind of just... things were done, things were made, but they didn't really stick to that idea. So, yeah, moving on, we see Leech Woman, and as we know, as we just said, she was Andre Toulon's wife. However, this film takes place in 1941. Well, if Andre Toulon's grave says he dies in 1941, how can the story begin in 1941, showing us a character very much alive and still proceeding throughout the years in life? It just doesn't make sense. This is, however, a film that I do really love. It's all set in flashback. It's all during the World War times. Yeah, it's a great story of revenge if you can let the continuity slide. Next up, we have Puppet Master 4. And this is where we get a load of, like, demon magic. This is where they kind of explain that the formula, the secrets, the science isn't actually science. It's all mystical and magical. Fair enough. We start talking about other worlds. That's fine. The puppets in this are now the good guys, and yeah, Tunneler is alive and well, despite the fact that he died in the first movie, and Six Shooter is now present, even though we only ever saw him in flashback in Puppet Master 3, and he wasn't in the previous two movies. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Present day for this, again, the time of the movie's release, this time 1993, and this leads us to the fifth film, which was shot back to back with the fourth film. And yeah, we are told in this film that Andre Toulon died sometime after World War II. However, this would mean that he died at least in 1945 at the very least. It just doesn't add up, because as you can see from the different timelines, 1945 Andre Toulon would have died somewhere after that at least. But no, we saw him in 1941 still living his best life, albeit revenge. And then in 1941, his gravestone says that he had died, to 1939, where we saw him blow his brains out. It's just a mess. Also in this film, Torch returns. No apparent reason, but he has been absent for 2 movies. Go figure. So, yeah, I'm not going to go into any more detail than these timelines, because it just gets more and more messy as the additional 9 movies goes through. That's right, 9 movies. It is a complete and utter mess. But if you can ignore the timelines, it is a great franchise and well worth watching. At least those first 3 movies. So that's the movies out the way, for now at least, here at Hydra Collectibles. However, I do want to expand on the rest of the Puppet Master universe, because it didn't just stop with the movie franchise. Oh no. We got comic books, and as many of you here know, I love comic books, particularly horror comic books. And these particular books did come out back in 1991. And here we have, from Full Moon Studios, Eternity Comics, which I believe was Malibu Comics that created these. I don't think Eternity and Full Moon are part of the comic creation. The comics were made by Malibu. But here we have Puppet Master in full colour, which obviously is a homage or a reference to home video, you know, now in full colour. I love these books. I mean, just the cover art alone is so cool. And this was actually a 4-part series, which actually did get a spin-off of 2 additional issues known as Children of the Puppet Master. However, I do not have those 2 issues. But as you can see here, just amazing horror cover art that I just absolutely love. So yeah, those are my Puppet Master comics. However, it doesn't end there, because we also got some Puppet Master toys back in the day. And here they are. So here we have our vintage Puppet Master toys by Full Moon Studios, and I absolutely love these things. They're really nice. They're in a sort of 7-inch scale, which obviously doesn't work with any other parts of your collection because they're just massively big in comparison. But I guess you could use them against a 1/6 scale figure and it would look reasonable, it would look okay. Yeah, I love these things, and they are very hard to come by now, and even if you can come by them, they're not cheap. They're quite expensive to find. So here we have Pinhead, which I just absolutely love this fabricated jumper that he wears. And then we have Jester, one of my favourites. There's something eerily creepy about this guy. You know, he's very menacing to look at, very sinister. He does indeed have multiple heads, which do spin round, and there's actually 3 sections here that he can alternate. Unfortunately, I don't have his hat. If I had his hat, he's worth a lot more money. But yeah, really cool figure. Then we have, of course, Torch, again with nice fabricated clothing. I do believe that he had like a fire extension, which I just never had. You know, I found all of these at a charity shop, had no hope in hell of getting any additional pieces. They were just as they were. But I do love these figures. And finally, the last figure of this collection that I have is 6-Shooter, and my god, do I wish I had the guns. I really do. I mean, this is such a great figure, and not a cheap one at all. To buy this complete is well over £100 for a 7-inch figure. It's insane. Now, this wasn't the end of the line. There's plenty of others that I do not have, but also NECA have created their own Puppet Master toys, and I really do hope that they're going to make us more. At the time of this video's release, they have given us 4 puppets in total, starting with Blade, the leader of the group, followed by Torch, followed by Pinhead, followed by Tunneler. These NECA figures are made to a 6-inch scale and really do work fabulously with your other horror characters. So I highly recommend that you guys get out there and purchase these toys. They look amazing. And finally, the last thing that I want to show you from my Puppet Master collection is some original artwork from artist Graham Humphreys. Graham Humphreys is actually a poster artist that has made several posters based on this franchise, and upon meeting him at a convention, I was able to purchase some original sketch work. So let's start things off with this awesome sketch of Blade, the leader of the group. So yeah, a very iconic character. And may I just say as well, going back to the movies, all of these characters, all of these puppets were silent with very little expression, and yet they just scream character. Like, they really do work so nicely, they work so great. And I'm really shocked that this franchise hasn't gained more popularity, or at least got higher budgets than it deserves. So yeah, there we had Blade, and here we have a sketch filled with Tunneler, Leechwoman, 6-Shooter, Mephisto, Blade, and Jester. Another Amazing piece here. And finally, we have one more, which is Torch, Pinhead, and another version of Torch. So yeah, I absolutely loved these things. I was so thankful that Graham was able to sell me them, because there's nothing quite like owning original art. So there you have it. That is Puppet Master, my 3 favourite movies, the order in which you should watch them, and my Puppet Master collection. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, poke it right in its little eye. And why not tell me down in the comment section below who your favourite puppet from the franchise is. I would love to hear your thoughts. For me, it's probably 6-Shooter. And if you enjoyed this video, please head on over here and check out this one for more Halloween fun. And until next time, I'll see you in another life. Take care.